Check, check. Hi everybody. Some of you may know me as a singer, some of you may know me as an actor, and some of you may not know me. I'm Vasundara Das, and let me just give you a few lines about me. As a singer, I am a student of Hindustani classical music, have sung some popular film songs in various Indian films of different languages, and I'm currently working on a lot of independent music projects and also on original soundtracks for films in various languages. So that's me as a singer. As an actor, I've acted in films like Hey Ram, Monsoon Wedding, Ravana Prabhu, to name a few. And what you don't know about me is that I'm a student of Sanskrit. I have been a student of mathematics and economics. I am an entrepreneur and a big follower of Ayurveda. But most of all, I think I'm an Indian, and that's what defines me best. So as I mentioned, I play a whole lot of roles in my life, as every single one of you here in the audience does. But the primary role and the one calling that makes me tick is that of a musician. So today I'm going to try and share a few perspectives about rediscovering India through music, or let's say rags to riches. When you think of India, or when I think of India, the first thing that I think about is the fact that there's 600 people in this audience, and every single one is different from the person sitting right next to them. We have diversity. We've talked a lot about diversity, I think, while growing up. We've always talked about unity in diversity. We've talked about how we work as a people together, and this is a prime example of it. And every single one of us that studied or lived in India knows what I'm talking about. And because of this diversity that exists here in this unique way, we have all been ingrained to be adaptable to each other, to be able to be adaptable to situations that crop up, to be reactive to situations that crop up. And this ability to adapt to different lifestyles, to cultures, to languages, to even religions and traditions is because of this innate sense of self-confidence, because of who we are, because we know who we are. We've understood that, and that's why we're able to be tolerant with each other. We're able to coexist in spite of all the diversity. And there's no way of explaining this better than to go to my primary medium, which is music. The music of India is self-explanatory of the diversity of this country. Because when you talk about music, first of all, I think India is probably one of the few countries, or maybe the only country, that has not one but two classical forms of music. Hindustani, which is the North Indian, and Carnatic, which is the South Indian. And although they are called differently, they have very distinctly different characteristics, they work on similar premises. They, for example, to explain it better, Hindustani music is a little more improvisational. It melodically or rhythmically encourages a student to be experimental, to be brave, to go out and try new things. And Carnatic is much more scientific. It's calculative, it's mathematical. It teaches your brain a different thing, or it works with a different part of your brain. All of you know that we have left brain and right brain activity, and it's incredible that these two forms of classical music actually engage different parts of the brain. Based on our two main primary classical forms of music, we are further fragmented into different folk forms of music. And I do think that, I met yesterday Ankit, who has been with me from your college, that comes from a different part of India. He studies in the south, but he actually hails from the north. So the folk music of Punjab, where I think he comes from, is so different from the folk music here in Mangalore. So here again, we see all of this diversity, even through the music. So you can just imagine what kind of diversity there is in the people themselves, the people who make the music. That's you and me. Believe it or not, it's not just about the musicians. It's about every single person that lives in this country, that makes the music what it is, that makes the country what it is. So let me make a comparison. I think you're doing this for me, so. Let me make a comparison. I would like to compare the people of India to musical notes. The people of this vast country with all of this diversity are so different from one another. Just like a musical note is so different and sounds so different from the next one. We are like that. And we all write different beautiful songs. To further talk about what I'm saying, I guess you've all heard of Baul music from Bengal. If you haven't, it's a musical folk musical form from the state of Bengal, which is in the far east of India. And you've also heard about Rajasthani folk music, which obviously hails from Rajasthan. Both these forms of music stem from one primary source: classical music. They are bound together by the raga system, by what is 5,000 years old, a tradition that has come down generations and has evolved as it has come down to us for so many generations. Yet, it's sung in two completely different languages. Baul music is sung in Bengali, which is the local language of Bengal, and Rajasthani folk music is sung in Rajasthani, which is the language of Rajasthan. Both of these languages are quite different from each other, yet very similar. Why? Because they both originate in something that's 5,000 years old or maybe even more, the mother language of Sanskrit, ancient Indian language. Sanskrit is something that brings them together, yet not so much. So when a Bengali hears Rajasthani music, he may not be able to understand the music or the lyrics that the music talk about, but he's able to understand the musical form. It's not alien to him, and vice versa. So, although what I'm trying to drive at over here is that there may be similarities and differences between these two forms of music, folk forms, any two folk forms of music, but neither of them is any less Indian than the other. And that's why it's a special situation. Why does something 5,000, and what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to skim over a whole lot of things that are connected to my field, which is music, and language is bound like this to music. Why is it that something that's written thousands of years ago can still be relevant today? And is there any possibility that something that was written thousands of years ago will still be relevant in the next 1,000 years to come or the next 5,000 years to come? There's no way to say it, but that's what's happened. Sanskrit was written and was originated 5,000 years ago as a language, and it still exists today. It's relevant today. Its origins are actually very scientific, and that's why it still exists today. The origin of Sanskrit is from vibration, from sound, from scientific reasoning, believe it or not, and from logic. That's how Sanskrit actually originated. And it's so powerful that it's been known to cure diseases by the mere chanting and composition of verses, certain kinds of verses, verses in rhythmical meters, verses in musical form. So again, we are brought back to music. So for example, Kasturi tilakam lalata patale vakshasthale kaustubham. What did I just do? Well, I chanted a verse that had a specific number of syllables for a specific reason, and it only allowed me to breathe at the end of the line after I completed chanting a certain number of syllables. So indirectly what I did was I did a breathing exercise. I did pranayama. So this is a language that has a reason for everything to be in its place. So this is how the verse continues. Kasturi tilakam lalatapatale vakshastale kaustubam na sagre navamuktikam karatale venum kare kankanam. And basically this is the technique that keeps us alive. What is it doing? It's actually, the way I look at it, it's actually code. It's code for your body. You don't know that you're doing it, but it's happening. You're exercising your internal organs. You're keeping healthy. That's why they say shloka every day. It's not because it has a religious connotation. The religious connotation is actually a coincidence. It's more about the actual kriya of the shloka or the verse. That is the importance of Sanskrit, and that is why it has stood the test of time. Yet, a lot of people think that it's dead. A lot of people refer to Sanskrit as a dead language. Let me enlighten you on a reality. Sanskrit is not dead, and in fact is being rediscovered by scores of new people that have never been in contact with it before. And a lot of them are Indian. So essentially what we're doing here is we're rediscovering the past. We're standing on strong foundations that have been created for us in the past. And when I say past, I mean many, many years past. And we are taking it through our present into our future. Recently, I guess a lot of you would have heard of Sufi music. Yeah? It is the new cash cow of the Indian music industry. A lot of Sufi music is gaining marketability. It's being sold around the world because people all over the world want to listen to it. There's something that draws people to it, and you cannot put a finger on what that something is. Let me tell you that Sufi poetry stands on two very basic ground realities. One is this hugely rich heritage that we've been talking about of Indian classical music, whichever the kind. And secondly, this huge heritage and this huge treasure trove of Sufi poetry that exists in this entire subcontinent. So these two bases are actually so old. One is thousands of years old, one is hundreds of years old, and it's appealing to 20-year-olds today in this country. Is there something to say about this? Definitely. It means that there is something special in Sufi literature that keeps it current, that never lets it die. Something that it talks to you about that you can't let it go away, whether in melody or in lyric. Sufi poetry, for those who have not been in contact with it, is primarily written in Punjabi, Sindhi, Hindi, Urdu, Rajasthani, mostly languages that are spoken in the north of India. And poets that have been famous in this field are Hussain, Kabir, Bulle Shah, Rumi. There's a list that goes on and on forever. But the parody is that it's not only limited geographically to the north of India. There are Sufi poets that have lived in the south and have written in the languages of the south. Kannada, Tamil, Dakkale Peer Muhammad has written some beautiful, beautiful works in Tamil. So Sufi poetry again has no geographic boundaries, no limitations that keep it in particular parts of India or limit it to any particular part of India. Why is it that, for example, a social commentator, which is what I call Kabir. Kabir is a social commentator more than he is a poet. Why is it that Kabir has his work that is still relevant today? He minced no words. He lived in the 15th century. he commented about the social and political scenario that existed in that time, in that era. But when you take his work and you apply it to today, he still works. When you apply it to the socio-political environment of today, it still works. Why is that? Let me give you an example. Kabira, तेरी झोपड़ी गल कटियन के पास, करेगा सो धरेगा, तू क्यों भयो उदास? For those who don't know what that means, it means, Kabira, why are you bothered that you live next to murderers? What you do, you will reap what you sow. Is this current? Does it work today? Hussein said, मन अटकिया बेपरवाह दे नाल, उस दीन गुनी दे शाह दे नाल, मन अटकिया बेपरवाह दे नाल, काजी मुल्ला मत्ती देंदे, घरे सियाने राह दसेंदे, इश्क की लग्गे राह दे नाल, मन अटकिया बेपरवाह दे नाल. It means my heart is stuck on something and I don't know what it's stuck on. And I think it's the guy up there. The Qazi and the Mullah might tell me this is what I should do, and they might point me in a direction that I should go down. But the actual person pointing me down that road, or the road that I must take, is my heart. Is it current? It's current. All of you have heard this saying, the one thing that is constant is change. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Well, let's talk about many, many years ago. I think you must have read in a history book somewhere that India was considered a wealthy country many, many years ago. Why? Because it had natural resources. And the same India, some centuries later, maybe a few thousand years later, was a colony of the British and was called the jewel in the British crown. But somewhere down the line it lost out in the industrial era. And during that time it started to be known as a developing country. And then from there we have progressed into today, which is called the knowledge era. And we are now being touted as an emerging superpower. What is it that makes this happen? What does India and China have in common that makes us emerging superpowers? I think the basic crux of this comes from the fact that both these countries have a 5,000-year-old heritage. We come from something. We come from somewhere. We have something that is deeper than the trappings of what today and modern day life brings. I'm so sorry, I'm standing in an engineering college and I'm talking about philosophy and history, but it's important, you know. This is what makes us who we are. So somewhere deep down in this depth of heritage, we have imprinted on our DNA that we come from somewhere really deep. From philosophy, let me take you to the field of environment. What are the two biggest concerns in the environment today? Sustainable energy. Where do we find sustainable energy? That's probably one of the primary things that we worry about. And then the second one, waste management. What do we do with all that waste? Where do we put it? Can I tell you something, and you may not believe me, that India was a sustaining culture 5,000 years ago. Before the word waste management ever came into the picture, we were managing waste without really thinking about it. We were working with solar energy. Yeah, we had beliefs. We pray to the God. We are God of the sun, and we say, you know, help us, bless us, you're the sole source of energy and all of that. But that is because we recognized what the sun stood for. The fact that the sun and the energy from the sun could give us everything we needed in terms of energy. The wind. Why do we have a God called Vayu? Because we recognized then that Vayu brings energy. Surya brings energy. So we prayed to the elements because they meant a lot more than just gods to be prayed for in the prayed to in the temples. Similarly, when you look at, if for example, you go to a traditional home in a smaller city, you'll see that a lot of their houses don't even need to be lit during the day because architecture has been planned around the elements. These are the things that we are beginning to forget in the cities of India. We don't see these things anymore. This is the culture this is the wisdom that has been with us for so many years, and we're leaving it behind. And when we talk of waste management, how many of you have gone to the state of Kerala, which is just south of here? Probably a lot of you. If you go to the villages in Kerala, you will find that if you walk into any given household, their garden will have a coconut tree, a banana tree, spices, pepper, chilies, vegetables, aloe vera, and they use and harness all of these resources that they grow themselves. They are one with the earth. They have a lifestyle that revolves around reaping and sowing. They eat on banana leaves even today, on a daily basis. Why? So they don't need to use detergent to clean the mess. They use the vegetables that they grow in the garden. Why? Because they've grown it. They use earthen pots to cook because it's healthier. They use spices that have grown in their own gardens. They use aloe for cuts and medication. They use Ayurveda, which uses herbs for medication. They use the hibiscus tree, the gel from the hibiscus plant as shampoo. They lead a truly sustainable lifestyle even today. And this is something that we need to remember because we're forgetting. If you've been to an Ayurvedic center in Kerala, you will see plane loads, bus loads, train loads of people from all over the world flocking to come and reap the benefits of Ayurveda. That we've always dealt with each other before on, but with a greater understanding of who we are. We've come into our own. We're standing up and we're saying, I'm Indian and I'm going to be counted. This is the new India, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm seeing right before my eyes here today. So for me, this process of rediscovering India happens every day. It's happening right now, right here today for me. I'm rediscovering India. I'm meeting you today. You are India. So consider this for a moment. In music there are uplifting notes and there are sad notes. The only difference between all of us here is that some of us are optimistic, some of us are not, some of us are happy, some of us are not so happy. That really depends on your outlook and how you look at life on an everyday basis. So every time you sing a rag, I'll give you another analogy of music. When you sing a rag, it never sounds the same as the previous time you sang it. Because there's a new intensity, there's a new dynamic, there's a new phrase that you never sang before. You're rediscovering it. Or maybe you're discovering all of these new things for the first time when you're singing the rag all over again, even after the 500,000th time you're singing it. And most importantly, maybe there's a new song there. Similarly, every personal interaction that I've faced and every situation that I have been in has been like that new rag. It's new. It's a new interaction. It's a new day. It's a new beginning. So I'd like to end by saying, contrary to the belief that people are running away from India in search of greener pastures, I think that it's exactly the opposite. People are coming back to India. People are coming to India. They're running to India. It's where all the action is. If you look at the job market, you're flooded with options. You guys, when you graduate from here, will be flooded with options that don't necessarily tie you to a future in either engineering or medicine, as used to be the case. You can be a singer. You can be a visionary. You can be many things. So, I think that the young people in India are standing up and being counted. I think that the young people in India are taking more active responsibility in who they are. They're taking more responsibility in the socio-political fabric of this country. They're making daring career choices. And in a nutshell, they've stopped singing other people's songs. They're singing their own songs.